What's up, deacons? This is Bishop Zack Lind from Arizona, and you're listening to the Homebrewed Christianity Podcast. You're welcome.
Hello, Homebrewed Christianity listeners. This is Tripp.
This is Bo.
This is Homebrewed Christianity Podcast, where we give you the best ingredients to brew your own faith. That's right. We don't want you drinking no Miller light beer, PBR, tasteless, chilled urine theology.
There's no reason for it.
No, there's not.
Because there's good stuff out there.
Yeah, maybe before a football game when you're 18.
Okay, that would be the one exception.
Yeah, and by that I meant acquire the fire. Oh, zing. Anyway, today on the podcast,
Rockin' Edition.
Yes, and you heard that nasty beat and fuzzy bass line intro. That was a little gift from Zack Lind, drummer.
Thank you, sir.
Of J.E.W. And you know, on Twitter, they shorthand J.E.W. Jew. And so this episode is called The Gospel According to the Jew, the J.E.W. And I recorded this episode with Zack Lind, a homebrewed Christianity deacon extraordinaire, friend on Twitter, the man who hooked me up first with a Rob Bell interview.
He did.
A fellow evolutionary panentheist.
That's what I'm talking about.
Zack Lind, a master of slapping skins. He was in town on the new J.E.W. tour in Los Angeles, and I went down to the Sunset Strip, and we went to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
You have to go there.
For breakfast.
But P.S., if you ever go there, don't order the chicken and waffles unless you've had something substantial to eat earlier that day. Don't go on an empty stomach, because the amount of dough and grease that you will eat in that chicken and waffles combo, you'll pay for it later.
Well, that's advice.
All right.
So we went there, and then I interviewed him in the back of the tour bus. Because
living the life.
Yeah, you know, it was exciting. But it really was great to get to see Zach. It was always fun to talk with him on Twitter. And 3 Christmases ago, he helped me put together Elgin's drum set from Tex Picks, because I had never put a drum set together. I was in rock bands, and not real ones like his, but like a Tim's. I never put together a drum set, and I had a little kiddie drum set. Could not get it together, and was complaining about it on Twitter, and then Zack Lind to the rescue.
You know, you're great at outsourcing tech advice like that. I remember when you first started brewing, and I watched your Twitter stream that night, and you had Christian Salafia. I don't know why you guys just weren't on the phone together, but that all happened on Twitter. You're great at outsourcing tech like that. No.
I'm great at letting other people share their gifts with me as I share my gifts with others. You know, because an eye doesn't look at the hand, Bo.
That's right.
And say, what do you see?
And in the same way, that's almost like a metaphor for what we do here on Homebrewed. We bring together a very disparate, if you will, collection, a cacophony of voices for people to breathe their own faith.
Yeah, and
we provide the ingredients.
And here it is. So you're going to hear Zack Lind and I talking about all sorts of stuff about music, about art, about live performances, about the emergent movement, about Arizona. You'll hear the story of the band, how I got interested in kind of more progressive theology. You'll hear what is it like to be on the road, be a Christian, practice spiritual practices, and have a family and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it's going to be a good old time. And
something to keep in mind, if you're going to follow Zack Lind on Twitter, you should be aware of something. If you misspeak, he'll call you on it. He is all over making sure he's not exactly a progressive all the time. He will stick up for people if he feels like they're getting the short end of the stick, and he's kind of a little bit of a police force on Twitter. He will watch over and make sure that it doesn't just become an echo chamber.
So this is a Homebrewed Christianity podcast, and it's exciting. It's coming to you. And remember, as you're getting all your holiday gifts, to click the Amazon link on the Homebrewed Christianity website. You can just still get those Amazon things, but we get a little percentage.
Yeah, and it doesn't change your shopping experience.
No, it changes our experience.
You won't even know that your computer has picked up a little cookie and that what you purchase benefits the podcast.
See? Thank you very much for doing that. We have a bunch of cool stuff coming up in Homebrewed Christianity in the next few weeks. and months. We're very excited, and I do want everyone to know that it's so far it is looking very positive, Bo, that this year we may in fact be in the black for Homebrewed Christianity, to the point that we can indeed have our deacon party that we discussed last year.
Yep, we said at the beginning of this year that if we made enough for a keg,
Yeah, we're going to be in three digits, $100.
we
If
are
do
going
that-
to share the bounty
Oh, yeah.
with the deacons at a party.
That's right. So if you are in the Southern California area, we're going to be letting you know in the near future exactly how we're going to celebrate Homebrewed Christianity being in the black,
It's
and to make
beginning
sure
to look a lot like Christmas.
make sure we blow that profit early. You know what I'm saying? But feel free. If
Nothing goes in the bank. We don't trust them.
No.
Operation #Drink Your Profits.
Yeah. Dave Ramsey's very proud. All right, here's the podcast. Go ahead and follow Zach on Twitter. You can follow me at Tripp Fuller.
At Debo Sanders.
There you go. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, shapes, sizes, the one and the only skin slapper, stick beater, the proclaimer of the gospel of the Jew.
That's right.
Zack Lind is in the house. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm doing awesome, man. It's great to meet you finally,
Oh, it's great to meet you.
and I'm super pumped to be on the podcast.
Yes, and we just had Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Yes,
How LA was that?
it was epic. I've never actually had Roscoe's before, and we recorded a record right across the street from Roscoe's, and I never went there. So I'm glad you took me.
Well, and the we is Jimmy Eat World.
Yes, yeah. I play in a band called Jimmy Eat World. We started rehearsing in 1993. Played our first show in 1994, so we're coming up on our 20th anniversary as a band.
Is that's like the golden anniversary, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to think about or just even say out loud. You know, it's like, but yeah, it's. I'm not sure what metal it is, but it's pretty neat.
So maybe you could say a little bit about the about actually the band itself, and what was it like? Because y'all are friends and you're forming it when you're younger,
Right.
And being together this long, that's not something that happens every day. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit of that story, going from friends to then full-time employees together and artists.
Yeah. So Jim and I, Jim sings and plays guitar.
He's the one with the like hardcore head nod.
The head. Does he have a good head nod?
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
I remember he has good.
He's
like,
got a good stage presence.
Yeah.
He's a good front man. He's our front man. He and I actually went to preschool together at Trinity Baptist Church in Mesa, Arizona. And we grew up together. His family went to the church. My family went to that church. And, when we both started, like I played drums and he played guitar. And we played together a lot. Like he'd come over to my house and we'd play songs. And we never were really in a band together, but we were friends. We knew each other. We'd play together. And then in high school, I formed a band with Tom Linton, who was going to a different high school at that time, but formed a band with him. And then that band kind of disintegrated, and then we tried to start like a new band, and we needed more people, so we invited Jim to come. And so Jim and Tom started, and then we had a bass player played for a little while, and then Rick, who's in the band now, started. He joined us after our first bass player left, and then and it turns out too that Rick and Tom were really good friends from junior high. So we all kind of known each other since we were younger, and when we started, we just sort of started as just like, let's just have fun and play in the garage, and so I think that's one of the things that's made it a little easier in sticking around and playing together for so long, is because I think we sort of started out under the sort of like kind of like as we were all like 18, 19, and didn't really have that kind of we weren't like trying to start a band to go make it. We're just trying to start a band to have fun, and I think we kind of kept that going, you know.
So being together this long and to keep making albums and creating together, how has just getting older, getting married, having families, and watching the music scene change and all that kind of stuff, how is having a long-term relationship in a sense with three other men change the way you create together?
I think you know, the way we make records now is a little bit different than how we made records before, and part of that is just because as time goes on, we've learned more, we become more self-reliant. Like Jim's actually really good; he's a pretty good engineer, you know, and so he's really handy in the studio, and we're pretty independent. But I think, I mean, a lot has changed along the way. I feel like I feel like we just kind of get by just trying to be ourselves and, try to keep it simple. Like just apply the things we learned before to the next time around, and not try to get too tricky and not try to be something we're not. I think that sort of helped us kind of just maintain a certain level of, it's maintained our interest because we're doing things we're interested in. And makes it fun for us. So we're also lucky in like our personalities are a good mix. Like we don't really fight that often, and when we do, it's an adult conversation, and we move on. And I think it's that's helped a lot.
So a lot of people that were my age growing up, all of a sudden you showed up on MTV. Mm-hmm. And the first time I saw y'all play in Raleigh, North Carolina, I was like 19 or something. Mm-hmm. And we were all waiting around for y'all to play The Middle because there are really hot chicks in that music video.
Yeah.
And it played all summer long. And I thought to myself, when I grow up, I want to make a music video just so hot chicks dance to my song. Mm-hmm. But I found out there that y'all had already had a rather intense fan base, that y'all have some like hardcore fans that have been fans of Jimmy World from the beginning. So what was it like, and what is it like having to negotiate those kind of like hardcore fans who've always been into your music, and then all of a sudden becoming a song that you hear on the radio all the time?
Right. Yeah. We've sort of had a little bit of a schizophrenic fan base. Like there's different sort of like sects of fans that we have. Like there are those fans that, are really into like the earlier records and have been around for a long time. And then we have the fans that sort of got to know us through when we had when we had commercial success, that exposed us to a lot of people. So like those people started becoming fans, and then like just even as we've been removed from that, and we're like more than 10 years after that, like there's people who become fans of the newer records that like the older records but are more identify more with the newer stuff. So I think it's just a product of being in a band for so long. It's like fans to sort of have debates about what album they like the most, or and that's cool. And like for us, we're just happy people are there. Like we don't really care that much if you're an old fan or a new fan, or I think just having the ability to go on tour and play in front of people is awesome, and being able to make a living, and so for us, like it doesn't really matter. But I mean, it definitely it makes putting set lists together kind of tricky, because you want to try to we want to try and entertain the fans and like give them stuff that they want, play the songs that they want to hear. So it does make it a little tricky.
Well, having enough albums that putting a set list together is difficult is a problem that a lot of bands don't get to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about labels, because if you just Google Jimmy World, mm-hmm. the phrase emo will come up.
Right.
But if you just listen to the wrong album, you would think that y'all are just like a straight rock and roll band.
Right.
So And I know that Tony Jones and I were talking one time about the same thing, working with like the phrase emergent,
Right.
and that kind of thing. So maybe you could say a little bit about y'all's relationship to just being labeled emo.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we sort of ignore it. You know, we don't really play to it. Like, we don't call ourselves an emo band, or we don't, you know, we don't really try to like connect ourselves to a certain genre. And I think, you know, while that happens, like writers will do that, like music journalists will do that, and you know, fans will do that. Like, we just sort of ignore it. I mean, we don't make a big deal. Like, when someone does call us emo, we don't freak out on them and, you know, like make a big deal out of it. But we also don't, like, you know, we just kind of try to ignore it, you know. And I think I think it's sort of dangerous when if you're seeking to attach whatever you're doing to like a genre or a thing of that moment, then you risk like kind of you sort of connect yourself to that genre for better or for worse. And, you know, we may be connected to emo in some way that we can't control, but at least we're not the ones like doing it, you know. And I think that's a big difference, you know. Like, I think for us, it's like the best way to get a dog to stop jumping on you is to ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of our method. We just sort of ignore it, and whatever happens, happens. You know, we can't really control what people write or what people think or how they label us. But I think emergent kind of has, like, that's the thing, is like when you actively attach yourself to something, like if it's emergent,
Like you hang your leaf on it.
yeah.
Yeah, jokes.
Then then I think you sort of made your choice, you know. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, like, you know, you've made that commitment. And I think that, like, it's hard to sort of attach yourself to something and then not, you know what I mean? But, you know, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that, you know, what I find funny is the sort of chorus of people that are saying, like, that emergent is dead or not relevant anymore. Yet, you know, I thought it was really funny when you look at, you know, people like Scott McKnight and Dan Kimball and Andrew Jones from
tall, skinny
yeah.
Kiwi.
So all these guys are like immediately starting to say that, like, oh, well, emergent's dead. But if you like go and search emergent on their blogs, like, it's in all their most recent posts, and like they're talking about it, and they're getting invited to go to emergent conferences and or go to evangelical conferences to talk about what emergent is. So it's kind of like, you know, I think that I think it's just a lot of people trying to cover their ass and like let their followers know that, listen, I'm not down with this anymore, even though I helped start it. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that.
So I'm interested as someone who we have multiple mutual friends who have some relationship to whatever was or can be called emergence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who, you know, their job isn't talking and writing and speaking about it and things, how has the transitions in that movement, like, how do you see it? Where do you see it going? And or what does it look like from the outside, right? Because that's very different than the internal politics of planning an event, or, you know, oh, well, now so-and-so and so-and-so won't come back on the podcast because we interviewed so-and-so.
Right.
And they don't want to, you know, be guilty by association. And it just so happened that's when one of them came out as open and affirming, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. I think it was not too long ago, maybe within the last year or so, I think I heard Tony Jones sort of make a really good case for how, like, the sort of emergent sort of point of view has really affected things. And I think it has. I mean, I think it's kind of like, I think it's definitely like an ingredient in the American church and in the church around the world. But it's like it's easy to sort of ignore the what I think it's brought into the mix. I don't really know. Like, I think people are trying to avoid talking about it, but it doesn't mean that it's not having its effect. You know what I mean? I definitely see that, because a lot of the things that I sort of witnessed coming out of, you know, emergent thinkers and emergent writers is that is something that people in the sort of grand scheme of the church are adopting. I think when it comes to the issue of homosexuality, and when it comes to the issue other things, it's like those are it's like people are trying to cover themselves. You have people who are really like, I really liked hung out, and he has a certain community that he's pastoring, and he has a certain readership that listens to him, and this goes for a lot of people. But it's like, as soon as if he were to say, well, yeah, I'm open and affirming to homosexuals, and they should be included with no limit in the life of the church, then there's like a fallout that would happen. It would really hurt what he's doing, and stuff like that. And on one hand, I'm sympathetic to that, but on the other hand, it's like the issue of homosexuality, I think, is making people scared, and like they're trying to cover their tracks and go back. Oh wait, no, I'm not a part of that. I'm not a part of the emergent thing, because now it's like emergent is sort of considered more open and affirming than not, I guess.
And there are worse things for it to be, I guess, associated with. One of the questions I wanted to hear about is the energy of a live event. I find, like, let's say we're doing the podcast live, or you're preaching, or a lot of people listen. Will probably be like worship leaders or friends that are stand-up comedians.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the energy of live performances, and a sermon, a worship service, all the way to doing stand-up comedy or a rock concert. There's sometimes there's performance, but there's also, it's a group event that's happening.
Yeah.
And you and your friends from 18 can play the same songs with the same instruments in the same place during warm-ups and sound checks.
Right.
And it's not the same thing as when everyone's there. So what do you see are the dynamics of actually that are going on in a rock concert, and how do you see those dynamics as things at play in just other parts of humans getting together as communities?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge. There's a big difference, like if you're just rehearsing in your, like we go and we rehearse. We have a studio in Tempe. We go and we rehearse for tours, but it's never like the only real practice is playing a show, because there's an energy level. There's a sort of vibe that's going on that you're affected by in the room. One of the things that I sort of noticed, just like on an objective level, is when we play big shows with lots of people. Like we just did a show in Chula Vista. It was a radio show, and Blink-182 was there, and 30 Seconds to Mars, and The Offspring. And I think there was like 70,000 people there. And this is pretty common for any show like that we do, is, I played on some songs I played to a click track, so it's like a metronome that I'm hearing in my ear. And some nights when I play, that click track feels really fast. And what that tells me is that I'm like a little bit lethargic, or I'm sort of behind the beat a little bit, and I might be tired or whatever. Sometimes the click track feels really slow, so that tells me that my adrenaline's running, I'm really pumped up. And whenever there's a big crowd with like just the huge biomass of people, then the click track always feels really slow to me. So like I feel like there's something in the air, there's like something going on, there's like an energy that happens when you have an intense kind of crowd reaction, or when there's just a lot of people. And that's something we've learned. Like, I mean, we can't play an arena on our own. Like we always like, but we played a lot of those shows, like opening up for Green Day or the Foo Fighters, and you learn a lot by playing those shows. It's a lot different than playing like last night we played in Fresno, and I think there was maybe 350 people there in like a small club, and it's a different kind of intensity. Like when you can see the people's, like when you can look everyone in the room in the eye, it becomes like a lot of individuals. But in a big room, it's like that sort of massive humanity is just kind of like one thing, that you're interacting with. So, I mean, we definitely feel differences. It's and I think it does sort of affect how you play, and it affects like how you perform for sure.
What goes through your head when you're at someone else's rock and roll show, right? Like, so as a minister, if I'm at some I'm on vacation, I go to a worship service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening. I'm like, really? You just Marcus Borg that passage. It would have been a lot better if you had gone with E.P. Sanders. And by the way, that story gets retold in Luke. It's and you're like, you have this different critical eye, and then all of a sudden you'll be at a worship service, and the music was pitch perfect, and the liturgy connected to the sermon. You get done, and you're just like, hell yeah, somebody planned that.
Yeah.
But that experience is something that I think you have if you went in debt for graduate school and and know what's going on. So like what's going on in your head when you go see a rock and roll show and you kind of know all that went into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think it's a different kind of thing. Like on one hand, like for me, I'm really attracted like to songs, and I want to go see a band play because I love their songs, and like one example, I went and saw Muse play, and Muse is a band that like I like their songs, but I'm not a huge fan of their songs, but they have some really good songs. But their show is like just watching it as a musician, watching it as like from the musical aspect of it, from the production aspect of it, it's awesome. Like they know what they're doing, and it's good because those guys know what they want. Like they, because it's easy to be a band and have tons of money and a huge budget and do something really kind of cheesy and lame. But those guys know what they want. They have a good vision, and they know what they're doing. Even though like I'm not a huge fan of like most of their songs, I was like very, very impressed. I was like, that is a feat. But then there's the bands that like have no production, have no light show. There's no planning. They're bad at talking to the audience, and they're not like, they're kind of, they don't have very great stage presence. But when they play their songs, it's like a sort of transcendent moment, when you hear these songs that you love. So, so it kind of goes both ways, It's, I always sort of thought like the coolest thing U2 could do is like go on tour and not have any production at all. Like no spaceships or lemons or cars, just a stage and just play their songs. And it would be like people would be totally shocked. And I think, so because their songs are good enough to where they can just sort of do that and like, but anyway, so.
They also come with an audience that knows every one of them.
Yeah.
That's something, when I went to the Rose Bowl, when U2 played here, and I don't think I've ever seen probably like, humans of every color singing songs together. And then, it ends with an offering to help people. So like it was a crazy experience. Yeah. And but they're one of those bands that have been around so long. They have multiple versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And then somehow they pull them all off in concert, and you're like, oh.
It's and I think the thing is that with a band like U2, the music is so consistently good over such a long period of time that they can get away with trying weird things, and like they can get away with walking out of a lemon and like doing strange weird stuff and just because their music is powerful. But yeah, I mean, like for instance, like right now, like we're on tour. And this is the first time in a really long time. Like we don't even have like a lighting person with us. We just use house lights and whatever, the house dude. And it's kind of nice because it's like, our mantra is like the new light show is no light show. And like, we just want to play our songs and, keep it simple. Like make it, and like we don't have a lot of stuff on stage. It's a very minimal setup. And, and it's sort of in keeping with this album that we did. It's sort of more like stripped down and raw and natural sounding. So, and it's been kind of cool. It's been kind of freeing in a way. Like you're not worried about this whole element of the production of your show. You're just playing your songs.
Mm-hmm. So what's the old song you fell back in love with recently?
Like of ours,
Yeah.
or like I don't really listen to our music other than when I'm playing it. So, we're doing a song from Clarity called "Your New Aesthetic." We've been playing that this whole tour, and so that's been fun to play. But I don't really. Other than that, I'm not really going back and hearing things that I'm falling in love with, I guess.
So, if you were in charge of a rock and roll circus and could pick any 5 bands to, and this is probably the eschatological banquet. Let's say it's that.
Okay.
All right. So, God is now all in all, and love is one, and we find out that Jesus is like. He said, Zach, could you help me organize a good old rock and roll show? I'm gonna bring the wine, and you have five bands that you're gonna put up.
That's a tough one, man. That's a really tough one.
And then when you get done, I'll get Bo to edit in what other people we've asked the question to and compare and contrast.
Well, okay. So I think, even though this is gonna sound weird, like. I think Paul Simon needs to be on the bill, and maybe Garfunkel can tag along on a few songs. I think that's important. I think I would like him to be there for that, and then I think we would need like someone who you would never expect there, like
Fresh Prince and Jazzy Jeff.
No,
like he doesn't do
I'm
Miami.
Thinking of like, maybe. Some sort of Norwegian black metal band or something like that. Like just that you wouldn't ever. But I don't really know. I think that would be.
So you're already planning this like a liberal. You find the identity politic marker and then stick them in.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I think that it would be good to have
everyone
someone there.
has their token Norwegian black metal.
Yeah,
band.
yeah. Immortal or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Immortal should be there. Paul Simon, and then. This is going to sound weird, but I'd like Bryan Adams to be there. Not Ryan Adams.
Not Ryan Adams. That would make sense.
Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams.
Yeah.
Like Everything I Do?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. I Do It For You.
He could do the hits. And then I'm trying to think. So that's
yeah,
3.
Christians don't like that song at their wedding just because it says I'll lie for you, and that's against the 10 Commandments.
Oh, man. Yeah,
you have
that's
to edit
right.
that out if you sing it at a wedding. I was just giving you a heads up.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lie for anyone.
Yeah. I think it would be cool to maybe have a comment, like we should bring Peter Gabriel back with Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter Gabriel could also do a set of his own stuff.
Ah.
So I'm getting 2 for the price of 1 there.
That is.
So that would be good. And then what else? Then there's one more left, I think, right?
Yes.
Man, that's a tough one.
But you haven't had someone that's going to make you fist pump yet.
Fist pump? I don't know. I think Otis Redding needs to be there.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be good.
I think Otis Redding needs to be there. And then for the fist pump, we can bring in Queen.
Oh, yeah. Plus, you got to admit, the right people would roll their eyes if Freddie Mercury was singing at the eschatological banquet.
That's right. Yeah. Queen is the shit. Like, I would say my top 3 favorite singers of all time are Freddie Mercury, Otis Redding, and Roy Orbison. Those are the top 3 for me.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury is he has ruined a lot of people's experiences at karaoke, though.
Yeah, I mean he's a beast. He's it's like hard to match up to him. He's a force.
Mm-hmm. So what is it? Maybe you can share a little bit about what is it like being like coming of age, more or less, on the road, and being a person of faith on the road. Like, how has the unique experience of actually keeping your friends and making music with them, and then being a person of faith who is always, you see the whole country all the time, and I don't see a priest here. I know Bono has one that he brings around.
Yeah.
But so how's that?
Well, I was raised Baptist. Conservative Baptist, and there's a certain vibe that you have when you're raised Baptist that there's like the secular sacred divide is really strong. Like there's the stuff that we're doing in Baptist land, and it's really important, and then there's the world out there that you have
Which
to
includes the Catholics.
Yeah, the world out there that you have to be wary of, right? So I kind of grew up in that. I was sort of marinated in that as a kid, and a little bit of that was broken up by the fact that my dad has worked in professional baseball his whole life, and I would go with him. The whole family would go with him in the summers, and I basically was also raised in like minor league baseball, which is decidedly not sacred space. It's like a very, you're hanging out with like guys scrapping, trying to get to the big leagues, and all the things that you would expect that would come with sort of the minor league baseball experience are there.
Has he been in the same farm system?
He traveled around from team to team, and like just kind of a journeyman coach, and he's been fortunate enough to string along a career in pro baseball since he got drafted by the Astros when he was in college. But so that was actually kind of a little bit of a break from that mindset. But like for the most part, I think you sort of are brought into the brought up with an understanding of like the sort of we're sort of safe in our Christian bubble, and then outside the bubble there's a lot of dirty, nasty, mean things that happen. And I think part of my traveling and coming out of that is a sort of like, as I got older, I was sort of wrestling with that. I'm not sure how I felt about that way of viewing the world. And as I traveled, I sort of, rather than viewing the world as something that I need to, like, the world needs to conform to like how I grew up or what I believed when I was a kid, like coming to a place where I'm open to learning from the people around me. You know what I mean? So rather than coming at it like, oh, well, I'm the only Christian in the band, and I need to convert my bandmates at some point, to what can I learn from my bandmates that can make me a better Christian? And so I think that's something that I think traveling and experiencing the world and making friends who don't have any interest in church or don't have any interest in Christian faith, but you meet there are like a lot of these incredible people who you become good friends with. So I've tried to I think that fundamental switch has been important for me, I think, because, I think that,
so there's no tracks in the bathroom in your tour bus, is what you're saying?
No tracks?
Yeah.
No, I don't leave the tracks out.
Okay. All right. So
that would be funny though. It would actually get a lot of laughs. I think it would be a good move.
You should get the Pete Rollins one that's basically like trying to get everyone to be atheist Christians. And that'd throw everyone for a loop. And
yeah, we could try that.
You've lucked out in a sense and ended up with Shane Hips as a minister.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up at a Mennonite church and kind of progressed past your kind of conservative upbringing, and obviously the sacred secular divide hasn't stuck too hard because we're in Hollywood.
We're in Hollywood, yeah, and
Satan is too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in a weird way, I've had the fortune of meeting a few. Like Shane is one of them. Rob Bell's another one. Like becoming friends with these guys, and learning a lot from them has been pretty big for me. And I have a friend of mine, a guy named John Chandler, who's a pastor in Austin right now, but he used to be a pastor at the church that I used to go to in Arizona, and he turned me on to Rob, and through listening to Rob's sermons back in 2002, that's when I kind of started. I kind of got turned on to guys like Brian McLaren, and kind of got turned on to Tony Jones. And I met Tony Jones, and Tony told me about Shane, who's in Glendale, and met Shane, and Shane has been a big influence on me and someone who's helped me a lot. So yeah, I think that's helped me in a huge way. These guys that articulate a sort of way of being Christian and a way of believing and having faith that makes sense to me, that I didn't like, growing up and sort of, in sort of my later teen years thinking, I don't know if like this conservative Baptist thing makes sense to me. But when I finally started, listening to these other voices and learning about what's out there, it helped me a lot,
What does it look like on the road? Like, you all have little bitty beds, very close to each other, and you're kind of stacked there. You're playing rock shows till late, and driving around. Like, how does spiritual formation and things work? Like, what do you have time? Do you have time to read and think, spiritual practice and stuff like that? Is the road like a desert, and then you recharge when you get back home, or like how's that work? Just finding the time on a rhythm that seems like I have a hard time praying, and I do the same thing basically every week.
Right.
Getting time where you actually sit long enough to not be the one talking.
Yeah. No, that's it's definitely a challenge, and I would just say I probably don't do as much as I should. And I mean, I think a lot of it is, going home. One of the things that's been like, and I don't get a chance to go there enough, but there's an Episcopal church in my neighborhood, and like growing up Baptist, there's something about the Mass in an Episcopal church that like is really refreshing to me, and hearing the sermon from the rector there at the church, and he's awesome, and so like just being in that kind of environment is like really cool, and it's something that I feed off of. But like when I'm on the road, it's sort of tough. It's like you're in a weird way. I know people are gonna think this sounds lame, but it's like you're at the office and you never get to go home. You know what I mean? You're constantly thinking about, like, at the end of the day, we're playing shows and we're having fun, but it's a business. So you're thinking about, like, well, how can we, how can the business be better? What are the things and that's a lot of the stuff that I deal with in the band is, like, I'm more sort of like the business dude. And I'm thinking about those things a lot. But yeah, I mean, like, what's really interesting is, like, when I'm in Europe, I get a lot more, like, I walk around town in a city in Europe, and I'll just pop into a cathedral or a church, and, like, there'll be no one in there. And that's, like, that's an awesome experience for me, because it does provide me kind of, like, oh, it's nice, and it's sort of ironic that, like, in a place where supposedly God is dead, I have more opportunities to, like, pop into a place and, like, spend some time, and just, like, even if I'm just sitting there, try to do stuff like that, but I don't get to do it enough.
I know that that you and I both have had interest in integral thought and things. So maybe you could say just a little bit about that, but also how I mean, you got to talk with Ken Wilber, so what does kind of having a philosophical view of the world and creativity and what's going on with human beings and cultures, how does that impact the way you're able to relate to people, the way you function as an artist, the way you create art and that kind of thing?
Well, for me, like, one of the things that I really like about the sort of integral philosophy or way of thinking is that it has, like, a hopeful view of the future. It's like I feel like in the Christian world, it's like the sort of the conventional wisdom that the world is just all going to hell, and or just everything's we're just on a downward slide until Jesus comes back. You know what I mean?
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. So I feel like the idea that over the course of human history, human beings have evolved. Human beings have become more caring and more compassionate, and have widened their circle of care and compassion. I think it also sort of feeds into kind of like the Steven Pinker line of thinking, like, where we are living in, like, the least violent time. And I think there's I really like that about the fact that we're moving through this sort of progression, and even as a human being in a singular life, even as we are through the course of human history, like we go through this sort of we go through these sort of stages, and at least for me, like I'm not smart enough to really kind of break it down and explain exactly everything about what Wilbur's saying, but like I think it's pretty easy to see that people are kind of coming through this progression, as human beings, and sort of they have a center of gravity and they relate to the world from that point of view. The only way to really move forward or progress is to, you have more empathy for the world around you. You have more empathy for, you have more care and compassion for those who are different than you, and being more inclusive. To me, it's almost kind of like, at least for me, when I read what Wilbur's saying, it's like a sort of scientific explanation for, in an argument to move forward, and to expect that as time moves on, we will. It'll be a sort of more hopeful time rather than a less hopeful, rather than like everything's going terrible. We're just going to wait for the Earth to crater and everything to be terrible, and then we'll escape.
What kind of questions are the ones that sit with you now that are kind of like new questions, things you're thinking about that you don't right now, and you're like, I don't really have the answer for that?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about is just sort of like, what's the sort of future of Christianity? Like I'm a guy who has certain sort of values and beliefs, and I'm finding it really hard to find like a church community that is a compelling community that that makes sense for my family, and like I have young kids. I feel like it's sort of a tough world to live in right now when you have sort of more progressive values, but you have little kids and you want to go to church, and what that looks, and is it important for Christianity to be popular? I don't know. So I'm sort of thinking about those things, like what's the future of Christianity, and does the future matter?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's okay if there isn't, like, if it's not like wildly popular.
Well, I mean, I think there's wildly popular, but even then, it's not like there's not a ton of churches around. Maybe even if it's less popular, we aren't invested in what might be communities with more beautiful outcomes to them.
Yeah.
Because I think I know a bunch of people that share that kind of frustration
mm-hmm.
of going, oh, well, here's where I am, but I can't find a community where that's who I get to be. I mean, part of actually running the podcast is I end up meeting lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite are when they are ministers.
Yeah.
And they tell me the same thing. I'm like, well, it would just be great if someone in your town, I don't know, worked at a church and worked to make this happen. They're like, no, I do.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean,
I think there is somewhere, right? There's some gear that's stuck, because, I mean, each month we get like 50,000 different people are going to download podcast episodes, and in flyover country and places like that, and they all will like voice these concerns. They're like, look, I want to be a part of a church that is celebrating life. I want to care about the poor and the planet,
mm-hmm.
and not hate gay people, and I don't want it to be boring.
Right.
That didn't seem like high demands.
No.
It's like Jesus is cool, and I want to pray and not be mean. And yet, I constantly interact with people that go, yeah, I haven't really found a place. So
yeah, it's weird. It's like we have this sort of, I forget who said this, and I'm not going to claim to say this, but like it's someone else who said it. I can't remember who it was, but he said that like Christianity is in the midst of losing its home field advantage. I feel like that's a good analogy. It's like, and in a way, I think that's really good. Like, I think it's good for us to like lose that advantage and to sort of have to be the road team once in a while and like fight out the road win. And but I feel like there's a sort of like when you sort of are reframing the gospel away from something that is just sort of an exercise in self-preservation, like I'm going to believe these things because I don't want to go to hell, right? Then you remove the motivation for what has, from a sort of way of thinking that's been the conventional wisdom for thousands of years, So I feel like we're sort of in this weird place where we need to articulate, and I think a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are articulating a sort of a reframing of the gospel that moves away from just like a self-preservation, fire insurance type thing to something much more holistic and beautiful. But like no one outside of like that world cares. Like, my friends that I hang out with, like people I play music with or people who I'm out with on the road, like they don't care. Like, hey, check out this really cool book that has these like really cool ideas, and like, yeah, and it like no one has any interest for it. So it's like, I don't know. Is there going to be a time where someone can articulate it in a way that makes it interesting for people outside of that world? I don't know. And
so
and is that something we need to, is that something we should be hoping for? I don't know. Like, that's what I mean. Like, what is that future? And, and is it sort of like misguided to want that, in a way? Like,
well, so, you're in Hollywood. So, and Rob's out here now, so he should have to drive to come to your concert tonight, or you should tell him you'll take it personal.
He will be here.
All right. So, but you have conversations with lifelong friends that are going to be on the tour bus. Mm-hmm. You don't want to. And so, what of the conversations that you carry on about life, meaning, existence, that kind of thing, with people you've been creating with for a long time? Which one is it that not like, oh, what would Rob Bell say if he was here? But they don't care who he is. But like,
right.
which conversation you go, you know what? He'd probably have something that would be fun to contribute to this one.
Yeah.
Or what are the conversations where you're like, who cares what Rob Bell thinks about this? To me, it's interesting that, like you get to decide, right?
Right.
What would Rob Bell say? Well, you'll be here. And which conversation do you pick up on?
Right. Yeah.
So we're in Hollywood. Rob Bell's going to come to your show tonight. And it's like, oh, it's one of Zach's friends. We're hanging out. Mm-hmm. So most people don't get to have Rob Bell join in conversations with their friends. Yeah. But you do.
Yeah.
So, they don't know who he is. They know you're a Christian, and they still at least hang out with you. Mm-hmm. What are the conversations they're having about life, meaning, and value that you're like, yeah, I wonder what would happen if Rob Bell joined this one, kind of thing?
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's, I guess, in a weird way, being with the same band members for 20 years, it's like we've had those conversations, and there's really not a lot of talking about, like, the sort of what does it all mean conversations, Two of the guys who were in the band grew up Mormon, and they're no longer practicing Mormons. And, I think they, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they sort of have just a sort of baseline weariness or sort of a not really all that excited to talk about religion. I think it's just kind of like there's not really a lot of conversations like that. I think more than anything, I think Rob being around and like them knowing him and talking with him and seeing that he's a nice person and like, and he's kind of like this, he's one of the very few like Christian pastors that hangs out with us, and they like him and are fans of his and like the fact that he stirs things up. But they're not gonna, they're not gonna ask really any questions that you know what I mean. They'll just hang out and talk about other stuff. It doesn't really get. I don't really find myself in those kinds of conversations all that often when I'm on the road.
Well, when you're a philosophy PhD and a minister, you're like the person everyone has that conversation with all the time.
Yeah.
And so I constantly have to remind myself that's not what everyone else does.
Yeah.
When someone asks you a question, they're like, no, I really just wanted to know what you thought about the movie. I did not want to get an explanation using Baudrillard and Heidegger. Yeah. And you're like, oh,
See, it's the exact opposite for me. I'm a drummer. Like, no one wants to know about philosophical insights or, theological perspectives or anything like that from a drummer. Like, we're sort of like a few rungs up from the caveman.
Well, but not everyone gets paid to like embrace their red meme. A lot of us go to jail when we go down to our red meme. You get to do it every night and cash the check for it. Yeah. So if I did, that's how you get fired as a minister.
Yeah, I have to it's definitely true. Or like when I go to the Cardinal game, I'm in my red meme for sure. Like,
oh yeah,
and that's definitely I feel just reading Wilbur and being justified to go down to the red meme when it's necessary is
for football.
Yeah, for football.
And so are you optimistic about the Cardinals' conclusions?
I'm never all that optimistic about it.
You save the optimism for, I don't know, humans, evolution.
Yeah, like important stuff. Like
yeah.
I think we're generally, as human beings, moving in the right direction, and it's interesting to see that over the course of just like the last 50 years, it's been pretty interesting what's happened in the human race.
Yeah, but in Los Angeles, we can't think of that currently until we see some improvements on the Lakers roster. I mean, that's it's going to take a World Series by the Dodgers to cheer up LA, and only that lasts for a week.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers are clearly, they're peeing in our pool in Arizona, so
we know that was really popular decision.
That was not cool. I sort of made a joke because there's a few LA guys on our crew and like giving me a hard time about the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. And I said, you guys jumped in the pool after you won the division. Like, did Mattingly promise you like Cold Stone Creamery if you won that? They won that game or what? Like, is that how?
Froyo.
Yeah, Froyo. So it's like little. It kind of seems like Little League to me.
Oh,
but maybe I'm just bitter.
You're allowed to be.
Yeah.
So what about your fantasy team?
Yeah, so there's a lot of fantasy talk on this tour because we have me and Tom, who's in the band. We're in the fantasy league. Our wives are in it. We have crew guys in it. Their wives are in it, and it's like there's 14 teams, and it's just nonstop trash talk.
You don't have RG3, do you?
I don't.
That's good.
I don't. I have. I'm currently in first place. I'm 3-0.
Nice.
So my team is doing well. But yeah, there's a lot of conversation happening. Lots of mean-spirited antics, but it's fun.
There are a couple people that tweeted me questions.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to not ask them. I was about to get sidetracked, and how has the change of technology, social media, and stuff impacted the music business? Who of the people you started out with are still left standing, and what made y'all get to make it, kind of thing?
Right. Are those?
Is it okay to steal your records? Was one?
Oh, okay, yeah. No, well, I think for us, it's a double-edged sword. It's definitely tough when when you see the sort of trend of record sales. It's tough, just across the board, not just us, but
yeah.
It's a little concerning that the work you do as an artist in the studio is just over time being devalued in front of your eyes. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. But a lot of these things we can't change. We can't worry about it. So for us, and I think it's kind of been like this for a long time, but we just want to write good songs and put those out and hope that people have a connection to the songs in some way, and those songs become meaningful for them. And that's all you can really do. And yeah, it's easy to get your music out there and it's easier to make music, but I feel like what's happened because of that is the supply of music so far outweighs the demand. There's so many bands, there's so much music out there, and it's it's sort of overwhelming, and it's kind of just a big ocean, and so. I mean, it's. I think it's sort of there's some good and bad to it, but in the end, we don't sit around worrying about it too much. It's like, we try to use the tools like the internet and social media. Those are great tools, but it's hard to like we have over 2.5 million followers on Twitter, but it's like when I look at like when we tweet something or like when we tweet a link to something or when we're selling something, like such a small percentage I think are even paying attention to it or like responding to it. It's so it's sort of like I mean people like will say, man, you have so many Twitter followers, but it's kind of like I don't know how many of those people are actually listening or focusing or or like because it's just
okay, I mean if I follow both, but your Twitter is on my like list that I actually look at.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you have all those Twitter lists.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Eat World not. It's on the band list, and
yeah.
Once I figured out that there was an app that would tell you if your favorite bands are in the town you live nearby, I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
But your personal Twitter is on the like Homebrewed Christianity Deacons.
Oh, okay.
Because now you're basically going to get elderized.
I'm an elder now.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yeah, but of Arizona.
Yeah.
Or do you want a bishopric?
Whatever you think is appropriate. I don't want to.
Well, I think you should be a bishop.
Okay.
A bishop of Arizona.
I'm down with
Homebrewed
that.
Bishop Bishop of Arizona, Mr. Zack Lind.
Thanyou.
All right,
yeah,
Reverend.
I feel honored.
Yeah, if you need to do a wedding though, now it's like completely legit. And last question. This is do you know Cold War Kids?
Sort of. I know their name. I've never listened to the music.
Their guitar player.
Oh, okay.
Is Johnny is now one of the regular additions at Homebrewed Christianity for like blogging and coming to live shows. We did a very alt country cover of Stripers to Hell with the Devil.
Oh, nice.
At Subverting the Norm conference together, and he said, "This is cheesy, but my wife, in parentheses, a very insane fan, super insane fan of Clarity, in parentheses, is making me ask for her, quote, can you still feel butterflies?"
Man, I feel the butterflies every night.
Aw.
Yeah.
Now,
But,
for people that don't listen to music all the time, maybe you should... We're not talking about the romantic feelings you're having currently, though I could be leading you to stumble. It is a tour bus.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, that's... Clarity is a special record. I mean, when we made that record, it was like we didn't think we'd ever be able to... We thought that was our last record, so we just kind of, and we sort of knew enough to be dangerous on that record because the first record we made, we kind of didn't know what we were doing, and that's kind of like the second time around. It's like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. But yeah, that's it's a song. There's a song on that record called "For Me This Is Heaven." That's a lyric too, and for whatever reason, people like that lyric.
Well, I guess his wife does. So
yeah.
There you go. Well, thank you. You have any last words now that you're a bishop of an entire state?
I just feel like there's a lot of pressure on me now. Like I need to. I don't need to wear anything special. Like I don't get a hat or anything.
I like your hat. You're rocking a derby.
Okay.
And hold on, I'll get a picture for the podcast. Now, we do want to let everyone know that when I was on vacation in Arizona, this is one of the ways you became a bishop was by giving very good craft brewery advice for your state. So why don't you go ahead and let the deacons, your underlings now, the people you're responsible for the care of their craft beer selection and souls in the state of Arizona, what the official craft beer selections are for Homebrewed Christianity Deacons.
Well, I think if you're a deacon and you want to get some good beer in Arizona, the first stop is Four Peaks Brewery. And I'm partial to the Hot Knot, which is an IPA, and it's a great beer. And I'll just go ahead and give you a little tip about Phoenix too. Like if any deacons out there are fans of wings, hot wings, then I would direct you to a dive bar in Phoenix called JT's and get the hot wings there. Good hot wings.
Hot wings with the hop knot.
With the hop knot, and they have hop knot in cans at JT's.
That's true. It's true.
So it's all good.
All right. Well, thank you, Zach.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It's been a dream come true. I've listened to the podcast for a long time.